Were you bullied as a kid? I assume most of us were, but how badly were you bullied? Were you targeted? How did it affect you? Did it affect you to the point that you spent many years afterwards, subconsciously and consciously, trying to build a version of yourself that wouldn't ever let that happen again? Hey, this is Jake Kassman of Drunken Logic. The last time you heard from me, I was previewing a lot of the themes that I'm talking about on this new EP, An Awful Lot of Nothing. Toxic masculinity and how it's played out in my life and how I've experienced it from others and how it affected the music that I've made. I got bullied from a pretty early age. I had a short fuse as a kid and was even more self-righteous back then than I am now. I wouldn't let things go and always thought I was right. And that made me bait, especially in sports games on the blacktop. Whenever a call went wrong or kids decided not to take the game seriously, I'd get real upset. Eventually they'd keep poking me and I'd slap or hit or kick somebody and we'd all end up crying in the principal's office. And this happened throughout my childhood. I got suspended a lot as a kid. My so-called friends called it anger management issues. The therapists and the psychiatrists and my parents all called it anxiety. I don't really know what it was, but it felt like everybody thought that if anybody was going to be the school shooter in our town, it was going to be me. Anyways, I grew out of that short fuse stuff in middle school at some point. But my friends, my so-called friends, did not grow out of picking on me. Dane Cook was popular with these kids, which should have told me a lot about their character at the time, but I was 13. And Dane Cook had a bit about Brian, the friend in the friend group that nobody likes. These guys started calling me Brian to my face. I didn't get the joke for months because I didn't listen to Dane Cook. They set off a smoke bomb in my backpack. There was one guy who would hit, I think, golf balls off the back porch at his house, but before he did, he would write my name and phone number on them. Nothing ever came of that, thank God. And more than once, I tried to sit with them at lunch when I still thought they were my friends, and they got up and left me alone at the table in front of the entire school. You can imagine how terrible that felt and how overwhelming and depressing an experience like that is when you're in high school and still trying to figure yourself out. So yeah, that affected me pretty deeply. And I spent much of the next decade and a half trying to make sure that would never happen to me again. I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of the major regrets in my life are when I haven't told somebody how I really feel about them in a good way, because I'm afraid that they and others are already laughing at me behind my back, that I'm already the butt of some inside joke that I'll only find out about at the most humiliating possible moment. And I feel that way because it's happened to me before, and there's a part of me that's deathly afraid that it's going to happen again if it isn't happening already. In fact, I think as much as I have always loved music, a lot of what's pushed me to a certain definition of success in music and in life is very much based on the idea of those guys will see. Those guys will see that I'm the chiseled Adonis of a man. Those guys will see when I'm a rock star, as big as Green Day was our freshman year. The point being that I don't get bullied much anymore, but whenever I sense it, I have a really impulsive and visceral reaction to it. I have a tendency to poke the bear and to not back down when that happens. It's not something I'm proud of. I wish I did it less. I don't do it all the time, but I definitely wish I did it less. Anyways, I can sense a bully really quickly. I can sense somebody who's trying to create a hierarchy of dominance and assert some kind of unearned authority. But I wish I'd sensed that my first roommate in Los Angeles was a bully. It was only after I moved in that I found out he'd actually put the previous tenant of my room in a chokehold, and that guy had called the police on him. Over time, he started yelling at me about the dishes and cleanliness when this guy had condiments and stuff left in the fridge that were 5 years old. There was food caked on the walls when I moved in here. Long story short, things got really, really bad. He would stand outside my room, pounding on it, yelling at me, and I felt unsafe. We ended up not being on speaking terms for about the last month I lived there. He also cut off my access to the internet, even though I was still paying for it. And at one point in the face-to-face confrontation, I think the last one we ever had, I turned to him and I said, "Man, in 15 years, I really hope I'm not like you." His response was to blow cigarette smoke in my face.
10 years time, 10 years time, and I hope I'm not like you. 10 years time, 10 years time, just an extra through and through.
For the song, we changed it to 10 years because that was catchier, fit the melody better. I'm a fan of this song, but I still have some misgivings about the part of me that led me to write it, and the part of me that is willing to say these things out loud in conversation with other people. Obviously, this was a guy trying to assert his dominance over another guy in a really toxic way. But I think it's interesting that the way we ended up track listing this EP that focuses so much on toxic masculinity, the first song on it is how I react to this type of behavior when I see it in my life, and how it is everything I don't want to be as a human being at any point, but let alone down the line when I hope to have a family and a home. I think ultimately writing a song like this is a much better and healthier way of addressing the bullying experience than telling people how you really feel to their face. So while I still feel uncomfortable about this song in some ways, I am proud of it in others, and happy that I can just literally write off an experience and move on in a relatively healthy way. That's the origins of 10 Years Time, the first single and the first track off of An Awful Lot of Nothing. We've got a lot more to talk about in the next few weeks. Thanks for listening.